Hashtag my classmates bullied me for wearing hand-me-downs. Now I design clothes for celebrities. The needle slipped through silk like a whisper through darkness, each stitch carrying the weight of 17 years of humiliation, 17 years of wearing clothes that belonged to strangers, 17 years of enduring laughter that cut deeper than any blade I would later use to carve my path to vengeance. My name is Elena Vasquez, though the world knows me now as Magdalena Cross, the reclusive designer whose creations grace red carpets and magazine covers, whose identity remains as carefully hidden as the bodies buried beneath my studio floor. Those same classmates who once mocked my Salvation Army sweaters now rest 6 feet below the marble where Hollywood's elite pose for photographs. The beginning traces back to Jefferson High School in suburban Detroit, where wealth divided students into predators and prey, where I belonged to the latter category with my secondhand shoes and faded jeans, where Madison Taylor and her circle of privileged demons made my existence a daily exercise in survival, unaware that each insult was weaving the rope that would eventually hang them all. Madison Taylor stood at the center of everything that mattered in our small world. Her father owned 3 car dealerships and her mother chaired the PDA with the kind of authority that came from writing large checks. Her blonde hair always perfect, her clothes always new, her cruelty always precise and calculated to inflict maximum damage on those she deemed unworthy of breathing the same air. The first day she noticed me remains burned into my memory like a brand. I had been wearing my foster mother's old cardigan, the sleeves too long and the color faded from too many washings, when Madison approached with her entourage of equally vapid followers, their designer handbags swinging like weapons as they circled me like vultures around carrion. She asked where I had gotten my outfit, her voice dripping with false concern, her eyes already gleaming with the anticipation of fresh prey, and when I mumbled something about it being a gift, she threw back her head and laughed, a sound like breaking glass that would echo in my nightmares for years to come, before announcing to the crowded hallway that I looked like a homeless person who had raided a dumpster. The laughter that followed was a symphony of cruelty, dozens of voices joining in harmony to mock my appearance, my poverty, my very existence, while I stood frozen in the center of it all, my face burning with shame, my hands clenched into fists that longed to tear their perfect faces apart, though I lacked the courage then that would later make me legendary. Every day brought new humiliations, new ways for Madison and her followers to remind me of my place in their hierarchy. They would bump into me in hallways, spilling coffee on my already stained clothes. They would whisper just loud enough for me to hear about how pathetic I looked, how sorry they felt for whoever had to sit near me, how I probably smelled as bad as I dressed. The teachers saw everything and did nothing, their silence as complicit as if they had joined in the laughter, their unwillingness to protect me teaching me early that authority figures were just as cruel as their students, just more subtle in their methods, just better at hiding behind policies and procedures that protected bullies while abandoning their victims. I learned to eat lunch alone in empty classrooms, to walk different routes between classes to avoid the main hallways where Madison held court, to keep my head down and speak only when spoken to make myself as invisible as possible in hopes that they might forget I existed, though forgetting was never their intention. My suffering was their entertainment. The breaking point came during senior year, at the winter formal that I had saved for months to attend, buying a dress from a consignment shop and altering it myself with skills learned from YouTube videos and desperation. The pale blue fabric had been beautiful once, and in my small bedroom mirror, I had almost convinced myself that I looked like I belonged. Madison arrived in a creation that cost more than my foster family made in 3 months, a shimmering silver gown that caught light like captured stars. Her hair styled by professionals, her makeup applied by experts, her confidence radiating from every pore as she swept into the gymnasium transformed into a winter wonderland, completely unaware that this would be the last dance she would ever attend. I had been standing near the punch bowl, trying to blend into the decorations, when she spotted me across the crowded room, her eyes lighting up with predatory glee as she whispered something to her friends that made them all turn to stare at me, their faces twisted with the kind of malicious joy that comes from finding fresh prey. She approached slowly, savoring the moment, her silver dress rustling like snake scales, her smile sharp enough to cut glass, her voice honey-sweet with poison as she complimented my dress, asking where I had found something so unique, so vintage, so perfectly suited to someone with my particular sense of style. The circle formed around us as it always did, her followers arranging themselves like a Greek chorus of cruelty, their phones already out to record whatever humiliation was about to unfold. Their faces bright with anticipation as Madison raised her voice loud enough for half the gymnasium to hear. She announced that she had solved a mystery that had been bothering her all evening. She had finally figured out where she had seen my dress before, It had belonged to her grandmother, donated to charity after the old woman's death, which meant I was literally wearing a dead woman's clothes to prom, which meant I was dancing in a corpse's cast-offs. The laughter that erupted was louder than the music, more devastating than any physical blow. It crashed over me like a tsunami of humiliation, washing away any pretense I had maintained about belonging there, about deserving happiness, about being worthy of basic human dignity. And in that moment, something inside me cracked like an egg, releasing something dark and hungry into the world. But I did not run, did not cry, did not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead I smiled, an expression so cold and empty that Madison actually took a step backward, her laughter dying in her throat as she recognized something predatory in my eyes, something that whispered of consequences she could not imagine. I thanked her for solving the mystery, told her how honored I was to wear something that had belonged to her family, how I would treasure the connection between us forever, my voice so calm and pleasant that several of her friends exchanged uncertain glances, sensing that something had shifted in the dynamic they thought they controlled. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced normalcy. I danced with boys who felt sorry for me, smiled at teachers who praised my resilience, posed for pictures that would later serve as evidence of my presence at the scene, all while the thing that had hatched inside me grew stronger, hungrier, more focused on what needed to be done. That night I lay awake planning, not the childish revenge fantasies that had sustained me through years of torment, but something more sophisticated, more permanent, something that would ensure Madison and her friends would never hurt anyone ever again, while simultaneously giving me everything I had ever wanted, everything they had convinced me I could never have. The plan began with research. I spent the summer after graduation studying fashion design through online courses, teaching myself pattern making and garment construction, learning about fabrics and fits and the psychology of clothing, understanding that fashion was not just about covering bodies but about projecting power, about controlling how others perceived you. I applied to design schools under a false name, using forged transcripts and fabricated recommendations, the skills of deception coming as naturally as breathing after years of hiding who I really was, years of pretending their cruelty did not affect me, years of wearing masks that concealed the monster they had created. Magdalena Cross was born in those application essays, a character as carefully constructed as any garment, complete with a tragic backstory that would explain her reclusiveness, her refusal to give interviews, her insistence on working only with a select few clients, all of whom would be chosen for very specific reasons. The acceptance letter from Parsons arrived on the same day Madison posted her engagement announcement on social media, her ring sparkling like a promise of future happiness, her caption full of gratitude for her perfect life, her comments section flooded with congratulations from the same people who had laughed at me in that gymnasium, none of them knowing they were celebrating the beginning of the end. New York City welcomed me like a lover, its streets pulsing with ambition and desperation, its fashion district humming with the dreams of thousands who believed they could remake themselves through fabric and thread, though none of them understood transformation the way I did, none of them had learned to shed their skin completely and emerge as something entirely new. I rented a small studio in the garment district using money I had earned through less legal means. The previous tenant had left behind industrial sewing machines and cutting tables, along with other equipment that would prove useful for purposes beyond fashion design. Purposes that would require soundproofing and careful ventilation, purposes that would leave stains that looked like abstract art in the right light. The first year was devoted to learning, to perfecting my craft, to building the reputation of Magdalena Cross through small commissions and word of mouth. Each piece I created was flawless, innovative, unforgettable, carrying within it seems a hunger for recognition that bordered on desperation, a need to prove that the girl they had mocked could create beauty that would outlast them all. By the second year, I had attracted the attention of several minor celebrities, actresses desperate for attention, singers clawing their way up the charts, influencers selling their souls for likes and follows, all of them drawn to my work by its unique combination of elegance and edge, its way of making the wearer feel both beautiful and dangerous. The breakthrough came when Sophia Reyes, a rising starlet with more ambition than talent, wore one of my designs to a movie premiere, the dress photographed from every angle, analyzed by fashion experts, copied by knockoff manufacturers within days, but the original, with its perfect construction and subtle menace, established Magdalena Cross as a name whispered with reverence in the right circles. More commissions followed, each one more prestigious than the last, each client carefully vetted not just for their ability to pay but for their connection to my past, their potential usefulness in the grander design I was weaving, the masterpiece that would require not just fabric and thread but blood and bone, screams and silence. Madison had moved to Los Angeles after college, her trust fund allowing her to play at being an actress while living in a Beverly Hills apartment that cost more per month than most people made in a year, her social media presence a carefully curated display of privilege and entitlement, her followers worshipping at the altar of her manufactured perfection. She had married Trevor Kingston, heir to a hotel fortune and possessor of the kind of bland handsomeness that money could buy, their wedding featured in 3 magazines and attended by everyone who mattered in their shallow world, their honeymoon documented across exotic locations where they posed like mannequins against backdrops of borrowed beauty. Through careful investigation, I learned their routines, their habits, their weaknesses, Madison's yoga classes every Tuesday and Thursday, Trevor's golf games every Saturday morning, their Friday night dinners at exclusive restaurants where reservations required connections more than money, their lives as predictable as the changing seasons. I began attending the same events they frequented, always in disguise, always from a distance, watching them move through their golden existence like actors in a play written by someone else, never suspecting that the author of their story had changed, that the final act would be nothing like what they expected. The opportunity came when Madison posted about needing a custom dress for a charity gala, something unique that would ensure all eyes were on her, something that would prove she had taste beyond what money could buy, something that would cement her position as a style icon worthy of magazine covers and designer collaborations. I reached out through intermediaries, my reputation preceding me, the promise of wearing a Magdalena Cross original too tempting for someone as status-obsessed as Madison to resist, though she had no idea she was commissioning her own funeral shroud, no idea that the measurements being taken were not just for fabric but for a coffin. The first fitting took place in my studio, Madison arriving with her usual entourage of sycophants and photographers, her presence filling the space like a toxic cloud, her voice grating against my ears as she critiqued everything from the lighting to the temperature, completely unaware that she was standing in what would soon become her tomb. She did not recognize me, 17 years in careful plastic surgery having transformed my face as completely as my circumstances, the shy, awkward teenager buried beneath layers of success and sophistication, though my eyes remained the same, still carrying the memory of every humiliation she had inflicted. I took my time with the measurements, my hands moving over her body with professional detachment while my mind catalogued every inch of flesh that would soon be carved away, every bone that would snap beneath my tools, every scream that would echo off the soundproofed walls before being swallowed by the darkness. She babbled throughout the process, her voice a river of meaningless chatter about her perfect life, her amazing husband, her bright future, all of it washing over me like rain on stone, irrelevant now that the final phase of my plan was beginning, now that justice was finally within reach. The dress took 6 weeks to complete, each stitch a meditation on revenge, each seam a prayer to gods who understood that some debts could only be paid in blood, the final product a masterpiece of construction and concealment, beautiful enough to stop traffic and functional enough to serve its true purpose. Madison returned for the final fitting 3 days before the gala, her excitement palpable as she saw herself transformed in the mirror, the dress hugging her curves like a second skin, its deep crimson color making her skin glow like porcelain, its hidden features invisible to anyone who did not know where to look. She gushed about how perfect it was, how everyone would be talking about it for months, how this would cement her reputation as someone with impeccable taste, spinning in front of the mirror like a child playing dress-up, never noticing the way the dress constricted slightly with each movement, never feeling the tiny needles that pricked her skin just enough to deliver their payload. The drug was my own creation, synthesized from research conducted in the darker corners of the internet, designed to work slowly, to build in the system over time, to create symptoms that would be dismissed as stress or excitement, to ensure that by the time she realized something was wrong, it would be far too late for antidotes or hospitals. She wore the dress home that day, unable to resist showing it off to Trevor and her friends, posing for photos that would serve as her last testament, her final moments of happiness captured forever in pixels and memory, though none of them knew they were documenting the beginning of her end. The gala was held at the Beverly Hills Hotel, its pink facade glowing in the California twilight, its grand ballroom filled with the kind of people who believed their wealth made them untouchable, their privilege a shield against the consequences of their actions, their money a barrier between them and the justice they had so long avoided. Madison arrived like a queen, photographers swarming around her, fashion bloggers analyzing every detail of her dress, society reporters asking about her designer, her radiant smile never wavering even as the first symptoms began to manifest, subtle at first, just a slight dizziness that she attributed to excitement. I watched from across the room, disguised as a member of the catering staff, my own creation moving through the crowd like a virus given form, its wearer growing paler with each passing hour, though her makeup concealed the worst of it, though her determination to be the center of attention kept her moving when her body begged for rest. The drug was designed to attack the nervous system gradually, creating hallucinations that would be dismissed as imagination, paralysis that would be attributed to fatigue, pain that would be explained away as the price of beauty. By the time anyone realized she was truly sick, she would be beyond help, beyond salvation, beyond everything except the justice she had so long deserved. Trevor was the first to notice something was seriously wrong, his wife stumbling during their dance, her words slurring slightly as she thanked donors, her skin taking on a waxy sheen that no amount of powder could disguise. But by then it was too late, by then the poison had reached her brain, by then she was mine. She collapsed during her speech, the microphone falling from her hand as her body convulsed, the crowd gasping in horror as their golden goddess writhed on the marble floor, her perfect dress now stained with vomit and blood, her carefully styled hair matted with sweat, her blue eyes wide with terror as she realized she was dying. The ambulance arrived within minutes, paramedics working frantically to stabilize her, their efforts hampered by symptoms they had never seen before, toxins they could not identify, a poison as unique as the woman who had created it, as personal as the revenge that had inspired it. But she did not die that night. The dosage had been calculated for suffering rather than death, for maximum pain with minimal risk of immediate fatality. She would linger for weeks in the hospital, conscious enough to know what was happening to her, lucid enough to understand that someone had done this deliberately, aware enough to experience every moment of her destruction. I visited her once, disguised as a nurse, my face hidden behind a surgical mask, my voice altered by years of practice. She looked up at me with eyes that begged for mercy, for explanation, for anything that might make sense of what was happening to her, though mercy was a luxury she had never offered others. I leaned close to her ear and whispered my name, my real name, the name of the girl she had tormented for years, the girl whose dress she had mocked, the girl whose humiliation had fed her ego, watching as recognition dawned in her dying eyes, watching as she understood that the past had finally caught up with her. Her mouth opened to scream but no sound emerged. The paralysis had taken her voice along with her mobility, leaving her trapped in a body that was slowly shutting down, conscious but helpless, aware but unable to act, experiencing the complete powerlessness she had inflicted on others for so long. I told her about the dress, about the months of planning, about the careful research that had gone into her destruction, about how every stitch had been sewn with hatred, every seam reinforced with vengeance, every detail designed to ensure her suffering would be as complete as the humiliation she had once inflicted. She died 3 days later, her passing attributed to a rare autoimmune disorder that had somehow remained undiagnosed until it was too late, her funeral attended by hundreds who mourned the loss of someone they believed had been taken too soon, never knowing that justice had simply been delayed, never understanding that some debts take years to collect. But Madison was only the beginning, her death the first note in a symphony of revenge that would play for years to come, each movement more complex than the last, each victim chosen for their role in my humiliation, each death carefully orchestrated to look like accident or illness, the work of a designer who understood that the most beautiful creations were often the most deadly. Trevor was next, his grief making him reckless, his drinking making him vulnerable, the brake fluid in his Porsche replaced with a substance that would fail at exactly the right moment, sending him careening off Mulholland Drive on a curve he had navigated 1,000 times before. His death ruled an accident caused by excessive speed and poor judgment. Sarah Mitchell had been Madison's closest friend, her partner in cruelty, her accomplice in humiliation. She received a package containing a beautiful scarf, its silk threads woven with contact poison that absorbed through skin, her death attributed to a sudden cardiac event that puzzled doctors but satisfied insurance investigators who saw no reason to look deeper. One by one they fell, the circle that had surrounded Madison in high school, the chorus that had laughed at my pain, the audience that had applauded my humiliation, each death unique, each murder undetectable, each revenge a masterpiece of planning and execution that left no evidence except a growing reputation in certain circles. The fashion world took notice of the tragedy surrounding my clients. Whispers began to circulate about the Magdalena Cross curse, superstitious models refusing fittings, nervous celebrities canceling commissions. But the truly ambitious, the truly desperate, the truly guilty continued to seek out my work, drawn by the very danger that repelled others. I became more selective, accepting only clients who met specific criteria, those whose cruelty had shaped them, whose privilege had protected them, whose beauty had been used as a weapon against those less fortunate, each new commission an opportunity to balance the scales, to ensure that those who had inflicted pain would experience it in return. The studio expanded, hidden rooms added beneath the main floor, equipped with tools that had nothing to do with fashion design, spaces where justice could be administered without interruption, where screams could echo without being heard, where the truly guilty could pay for their crimes in privacy and pain. Detective Maria Santos was the first to notice the pattern, her investigation beginning with Madison's death and expanding as more bodies accumulated, more victims connected by threads invisible to everyone except someone who understood the intricate web of high school social dynamics, the lasting impact of teenage trauma. She was good at her job, too good, her questions getting closer to the truth with each interview, her suspicions focusing on connections that others had missed, her persistence threatening to unravel years of careful planning. But she had made one crucial mistake: she had underestimated the resources available to someone who dressed Hollywood's elite. The commission came through intermediaries, a red carpet gown for a charity event, something spectacular that would ensure all cameras were focused on the wearer, something that would make headlines and launch careers. Detective Santos's daughter was an aspiring actress, beautiful enough to succeed if given the right opportunities, desperate enough to accept help from unexpected sources. I met with Rebecca Santos in a coffee shop near UCLA, her youth and ambition radiating from every pore, her dreams as bright as her mother's badge, her hunger for fame making her vulnerable to offers that seemed too good to be true, though desperation had taught her to grab opportunities regardless of their source. The dress was everything I promised, a creation worthy of magazine covers and award show presentations, its construction flawless, its design innovative, its hidden features undetectable to anyone who did not know the specific pressure points that would activate them, the precise movements that would trigger their release. Rebecca wore it to the charity gala with confidence that bordered on arrogance, her beauty enhanced by my creation, her presence commanding attention from everyone in the room, photographers capturing her from every angle, fashion bloggers analyzing every detail, none of them knowing they were documenting the final hours of Detective Santos's investigation. The drug took effect during the after-party, Rebecca collapsing in the bathroom as the paralytic agent spread through her system, her body shutting down in the same pattern that had claimed Madison, though this time there were no witnesses, no one to call for help, no chance of survival. I called Detective Santos personally, my voice disguised by technology that made identification impossible, telling her exactly where to find her daughter, exactly what had been done to her, exactly who was responsible for her death, watching through hidden cameras as she raced through the city to arrive too late, too broken, too destroyed to continue her investigation. She found Rebecca in the hotel bathroom, still wearing my creation, still beautiful even in death, the dress unmarked by the violence that had claimed her, its perfection a mockery of the loss that would define the rest of Detective Santos's life, its elegance a reminder that beauty and horror were often indistinguishable. The case was closed within a week, officially attributed to a drug overdose that fit the narrative of young Hollywood excess. Detective Santos took early retirement, her career ended by grief, her investigation abandoned, her questions left unanswered, justice served not through courts but through a mother's broken heart. Years passed, my reputation grew, Magdalena Cross became a name spoken with reverence and fear in equal measure, celebrities wearing my creations to the most important events of their lives, never knowing they were gambling with forces beyond their understanding, never realizing that fashion could be fatal. I moved to a larger studio, one that could accommodate the growing demand for my work, the expanding scope of my operations, the increasing complexity of my revenge, each new space designed with multiple purposes in mind, beauty and brutality sharing the same walls, creativity and cruelty drawing from the same well. The waiting list for my designs stretched for months, years for the most exclusive pieces, my clients including names that graced magazine covers and movie screens, their wealth and fame offering no protection from judgments they did not even know had been passed, their ignorance of their crimes no shield against the consequences that awaited them. Some died wearing my creations, others survived to live with the knowledge that they had been chosen, that they had been weighed and found wanting, that someone out there knew their secrets and held their lives in hands that had learned to create beauty and dispense death with equal skill. The fashion industry adapted to my presence like an ecosystem adjusting to a new predator, some thriving in the danger I represented, others fleeing to safer waters, all of them changed by the understanding that clothing could be more than decoration, that design could be destiny, that the wrong dress could be a death sentence. I began teaching, selecting students who showed promise not just in construction and design but in understanding the deeper purposes that fashion could serve, those who had been hurt, who had been dismissed, who had been treated as less than human by those who believed their beauty or wealth made them superior. They learned quickly, these wounded souls, their pain making them eager students, their hunger for justice making them perfect apprentices. Together we expanded the reach of our work, our influence spreading through the industry like a virus, our message clear to those who understood its language. The studio became a pilgrimage site for the wronged, the dismissed, the humiliated. They came seeking not just beautiful clothes but beautiful revenge, not just garments but justice, not just fashion but power over those who had used their position to inflict pain on others. Each student brought their own stories, their own lists of those who deserved punishment, their own skills and resources to contribute to the growing network of consequence. We became a family bound not by blood but by shared understanding of what it meant to be powerless, what it cost to reclaim that power. Madison's old friends began dying in greater numbers, heart attacks and accidents, overdoses and suicides, their deaths spaced far enough apart to avoid pattern recognition, close enough together to ensure the message was received by those who mattered, the surviving members of their circle growing paranoid, suspicious, afraid. They hired bodyguards and private investigators, changed their routines and varied their schedules. Some even left the country, fleeing to places they thought would be safe, never understanding that geography offered no protection from the kind of justice we dispensed, that money could not buy immunity from consequences that had been building for decades. The internet helped, social media providing detailed records of their lives, their movements, their relationships, their vulnerabilities mapped out in posts and photos, their secrets revealed in comments and messages, their entire existence documented for anyone with the patience to look, the skill to analyze, the determination to act. I watched them age through their Instagram accounts, their faces marked by stress and fear, their eyes haunted by knowledge they could not quite grasp, their perfect lives slowly crumbling as friends disappeared and allies died, their golden world tarnishing under the weight of consequences they had never imagined possible. Some tried to reach out, former classmates sending messages through mutual friends, offering apologies for things they claimed not to remember, extending invitations to reunions I would never attend, their desperation growing as their numbers dwindled, their fear becoming palpable even through digital communication. But apologies were meaningless when offered only in fear, forgiveness impossible when sought only to avoid consequences, their regret coming decades too late to matter, their terror a pale reflection of what they had inflicted on others, what they would experience before their stories ended. The high school itself became a museum of sorts, its hallways haunted by memories of cruelty, its classrooms echoing with laughter that had cut deeper than knives, its gym the site of humiliations that had shaped the person I became, the monster they had created through their casual thoughtlessness. I visited once, disguised as a successful alumna returning to inspire current students, walking the same corridors where I had once cowered, standing in the same spaces where they had cornered me, breathing the same air that had once been poisoned by their mockery, though now I was the one with power, now I was the one who decided who lived and who died. The principal recognized me from old yearbook photos, his face lighting up with the kind of pride that schools reserved for successful graduates, his introduction painting me as proof that dreams could come true, that hard work paid off, that anyone could rise above their circumstances, though he had no idea how literally I had taken that advice. I spoke to the current students about fashion, about following dreams, about the importance of treating others with kindness, my words carrying weight that came from experience, from understanding exactly what cruelty could create, what monsters could be born from the wombs of high school hallways, what justice looked like when it finally arrived. They listened with the same distraction that had marked my own high school experience, their phones more interesting than my words, their conversations more important than my message, their casual cruelty already forming patterns that would define them, already creating victims who would one day seek their own justice. After the presentation, I walked through the halls alone, my footsteps echoing in spaces that had once terrified me, my presence commanding respect from students who sensed something dangerous beneath my success, something that whispered warnings about the price of casual cruelty, the consequences of choosing victims poorly. The trophy case still held photos from my senior year, Madison's face smiling out from group shots and formal portraits, her beauty preserved forever in silver frames, her cruelty immortalized in yearbook pages, her death unknown to current students who saw only a pretty girl frozen in time, unaware that time had finally caught up with her. I left a donation that day, money earmarked for anti-bullying programs, for counseling services, for anything that might prevent future Madison Taylors from creating future Elena Vasquez, though I knew the gesture was symbolic, that human nature would always create predators and prey, that my work would never truly be finished. The fashion world continued to evolve around my influence, new designers emerging who understood the deeper purposes clothing could serve, the ways that beauty could mask danger, the power that came from controlling how others saw you, how you saw yourself, how the world remembered you after you were gone. My students graduated to their own studios, their own clients, their own lists of those who deserved punishment, the network expanding like ripples in a pond, each new wave carrying the message further, ensuring that the Madison Taylors of the world would never again feel safe in their cruelty, never again believe their privilege made them untouchable. I began writing, documenting not just the techniques of fashion design but the philosophy behind it, the understanding that clothes were armor, weapons, shrouds depending on their purpose, their construction, their wearer's intentions, my words spreading through underground channels to those who needed to hear them, who understood their deeper meaning. The authorities never connected the dots, the deaths too scattered, too varied, too perfectly disguised as natural causes or tragic accidents, their investigations hampered by jurisdictional boundaries, by limited resources, by an unwillingness to believe that fashion could be fatal, that clothing could kill, that designers could be dealers in death. I grew older, my hair silvering, my face marked by years of satisfaction, my hands steady despite their age, still capable of creating beauty, still willing to dispense justice, still hungry for the next commission, the next client who needed to understand that actions had consequences, that cruelty created monsters, that some debts could only be paid in blood. The studio became legendary, whispered about in fashion schools and design circles, its location known only to those who had earned the right to know, its services available only to those who understood their true nature, its reputation built on beauty and terror in equal measure, its influence spreading like a plague through an industry built on image and illusion. New clients arrived weekly, celebrities and socialites, politicians and business leaders, all of them drawn by reputation, by desperation, by the promise of transformation that went beyond mere clothing, transformation that touched something deeper, something that could not be achieved through conventional means, something that required unconventional methods, unconventional prices. They came seeking beauty and left with justice, though they rarely understood the difference until it was too late, until they felt the first effects of whatever price their past actions had earned them, until they realized that Magdalena Cross did not just dress bodies but balanced scales, did not just create fashion but administered karma. The waiting list grew longer, the commissions more complex, the clients more desperate, each new name a puzzle to be solved, a history to be investigated, a judgment to be rendered, the work becoming less about fashion and more about justice, less about clothes and more about consequences, less about design and more about destiny. I became a myth, a legend, a cautionary tale told in whispers, my existence doubted by those who had never felt my influence, my reality confirmed by those who had worn my creations, who had experienced firsthand the power that could be woven into silk and lace, the danger that could be hidden in seams and stitches. The industry adapted, as it always did, new safety measures implemented, new background checks required, new insurance policies purchased to protect against risks that had never existed before I began my work, though no amount of preparation could protect the truly guilty, no precaution could shield those who deserved punishment. Young designers sought me out, hoping to learn my techniques, to understand my methods, to discover the secrets that had made me legendary, though few possessed the discipline, the patience, the fundamental understanding of justice that the work required, most turning away when they realized what true fashion design demanded. Those who stayed learned quickly or died trying, the work itself serving as a filter, separating those who were merely curious from those who were truly committed, those who sought fame from those who sought justice, those who wanted to create beauty from those who needed to balance scales. The studio expanded again, underground levels added to accommodate the growing scope of operations, the increasing complexity of commissions, the rising demand for services that could not be advertised, could not be discussed, could only be whispered about in certain circles, only accessed through proper channels, only survived by the truly innocent. I began training successors, students who showed not just talent but understanding, not just skill but vision, not just ability but hunger for the kind of justice that could only be sewn into silk, cut from cloth, tailored to fit the specific crimes of specific individuals, crafted with the care and precision that true art demanded. They learned the old ways and the new, traditional techniques and modern innovations, the history of fashion and the future of justice, their education encompassing not just construction and design but psychology and chemistry, anatomy and toxicology, everything needed to create garments that were more than decoration, more than protection, more than beauty. The network grew, students becoming teachers, teachers becoming legends, legends becoming myths, the influence spreading through generations of designers who understood their true purpose, who saw clothing not as commodity but as consequence, not as product but as justice, not as fashion but as fate. Madison Taylor's face still haunted my dreams sometimes, though now it was marked by the terror of recognition, the understanding of what she had created, the knowledge that her cruelty had given birth to something far more dangerous than she had ever imagined, something that would outlast her, outlive her, outgrow anything she could have conceived. I kept her picture on my desk, not as trophy but as reminder, not as celebration but as origin story, the face that had launched 1,000 deaths, the cruelty that had birthed an empire built on consequence, the moment when Elena Vasquez had died and Magdalena Cross had been born from her ashes. The fashion weeks became hunting grounds, runways transformed into stages where justice was modeled alongside beauty, where my creations moved like living things among the crowd, their wearers unknowing vessels carrying messages of consequence to those who understood the language, those who recognized the signs, those who knew their time was running short. Paris, Milan, New York, London, each city offering new opportunities, new clients, new victims who had earned their fate through years of casual cruelty, their crimes documented in society pages and gossip columns, their guilt written in the dismissive glances they gave to those they considered beneath them, their sentences sewn into the very fabric they would wear to their deaths. The Rothschild girl was next, heir to a fortune built on others' misery, her boarding school years marked by the same casual cruelty that had defined Madison's reign, her victims scattered across continents but united in their pain, their stories reaching me through networks that spanned the globe, their pleas for justice answered in thread and needle. She commissioned a wedding dress, something that would cement her position in society's upper echelons, something worthy of the cathedral ceremony that would unite two fortunes in matrimony, something that would be photographed and analyzed and remembered for generations, though her memory would be preserved in ways she never imagined. The gown took months to complete, each pearl sewn by hand, each crystal placed with precision, each hidden element calibrated to activate at exactly the right moment, when all eyes would be upon her, when cameras would capture every detail, when the world would witness justice delivered in real time to someone who had never believed consequences applied to her. She walked down that aisle like a vision, her beauty enhanced by my creation, her smile radiant with happiness that would last exactly as long as I had calculated, her life measured not in years but in steps, each one bringing her closer to the moment when past and present would collide, when debts would be collected, when the bill for her cruelty would finally come due. The collapse happened during the vows, her body convulsing as the neural toxin spread through her system, her white dress staining red as blood vessels burst beneath skin that had never known real pain, her screams echoing through stone arches that had witnessed centuries of ceremonies but never anything like this, never justice disguised as matrimony. The footage went viral, as I had known it would, the wedding dress becoming the most analyzed garment in fashion history, experts studying every detail while missing the most important ones, the hidden mechanisms that had delivered perfect justice to someone who had destroyed lives with the same casual ease that others ordered coffee. Her death spawned conspiracy theories and urban legends, some coming remarkably close to the truth while others wandered into fantasy, all of them spreading the message that I wanted spread, that actions had consequences, that cruelty created monsters, that some debts could only be paid in blood, that fashion could be fatal to those who deserved it. The wedding industry convulsed with paranoia, designers subjected to background checks and psychological evaluations, security measures implemented that would have been unthinkable before my work began its influence, though no amount of screening could protect the guilty from judgment that came disguised as beauty, wrapped in silk, delivered with a smile. I watched the investigation unfold from a distance, authorities grasping for explanations that made sense within their limited understanding of how the world worked, how justice operated, how fashion could be weaponized by those who understood its true power, its capacity to transform not just appearance but reality itself. They never found the source of the toxin, never identified the delivery mechanism, never connected the death to the dozens of others that had preceded it, their failure testimony to the effectiveness of methods refined over decades of practice, perfected through years of patient experimentation, validated by results that spoke louder than any confession. The fashion world adapted again, as it always did, new protocols established, new insurance requirements mandated, new fears acknowledged and catalogued, though the truly guilty understood that no protocol could protect them, no insurance could compensate for crimes that had earned them a place on my list, no fear could match the terror of knowing they had been chosen. My reputation grew with each commission, each death, each perfectly executed act of justice disguised as tragic accident. My name whispered in corners where the wealthy gathered, my services sought by those desperate enough to risk everything for the chance to wear something I had created, to be touched by the legend I had become. The studio became a fortress, its location known only to those who needed to know, its defenses designed by experts who understood that my work had created enemies as well as admirers, that some would seek revenge for justice delivered, that protection was necessary for someone who had made themselves the arbiter of consequence in a world that preferred chaos. New students arrived constantly, drawn by reputation and necessity, their own stories of humiliation and dismissal serving as credentials, their hunger for justice their qualification, their willingness to learn the price of admission to a world where fashion was power, where design was destiny, where clothing could kill. They learned quickly or left permanently, the work itself serving as judge and jury, separating those who were meant for this life from those who were merely curious, those who understood justice from those who simply sought revenge, those who could create beauty from those who only wanted to inflict pain. The successful ones became my children, my heirs, my legacy, their studios spreading across continents like cancer cells carrying the message of consequence to every corner of the world where privilege protected cruelty, where wealth shielded brutality, where beauty masked the ugliness of souls that had never learned empathy. Together we created a new world, one where actions had consequences, where cruelty was answered with justice, where the Madison Taylors could no longer hide behind their privilege, their beauty, their belief that money made them untouchable, their conviction that others existed only for their amusement. The old ways were dying, replaced by new understanding, new rules, new consequences for those who believed themselves above judgment, the fashion industry becoming the vehicle for transformation that went beyond mere clothing, beyond surface changes, beyond anything the world had seen before. I grew older but not weaker, my hands still steady, my mind still sharp, my hunger for justice still unsatisfied as long as cruelty existed in the world, as long as privilege protected brutality, as long as beauty was used as weapon against those deemed unworthy, as long as children were humiliated for wearing hand-me-downs. The work continued, would always continue, each new commission a chance to balance scales that had been tilted for too long, each new client an opportunity to deliver justice to those who had earned it, each new death a message to those who might consider following in Madison's footsteps, who might think their privilege made them safe. My legacy was written not in fashion magazines but in obituaries, not in award ceremonies but in funeral services, not in glowing reviews but in terror-filled whispers, the understanding that somewhere in the world, someone was watching, someone was judging, someone was preparing to deliver justice to those who thought themselves beyond its reach. The 17-year-old girl who had been humiliated in that gymnasium was gone, transformed into something harder, something more dangerous, something that the world had created through its casual cruelty and now had to live with, had to fear, had to respect even if it could never love what it had made. Madison Taylor's laughter had died with her, but its echo lived on in the work I did, the justice I delivered, the balance I restored to a world that had forgotten that actions had consequences, that cruelty created monsters, that some debts could only be paid in blood, that fashion could be fatal to those who deserved it. The needle continued to move through silk, each stitch a promise, each seam a threat, each garment a message to those who understood its language, who recognized its purpose, who knew that somewhere in the world, justice was being sewn into every thread, woven into every pattern, cut from cloth that had been dyed with the tears of the innocent and the blood of the guilty. And in the darkness of my studio, surrounded by creations that were more than clothing, more than art, more than anything the world could imagine, I smiled and planned and worked, knowing that my story was not ending but beginning, that every new dawn brought new opportunities for justice, new chances to balance scales, new victims who had earned their fate through years of casual cruelty. The girl in the hand-me-downs was dead, but what she had become would live forever, would continue the work until every Madison Taylor had been found, had been judged, had been given exactly what they deserved, delivered with the kind of precision that only true artists could achieve, wrapped in beauty that concealed justice, disguised as fashion that was really fate. The world had created me through its cruelty, and now it would live with what it had made, would fear what it had birthed, would understand that some transformations could not be undone, some monsters could not be contained, some justice could not be stopped once it had been awakened, once it had learned to sew consequence into silk, once it had discovered that the most beautiful revenge was the kind that looked like accident, like illness, like anything except what it really was. In the end, Madison Taylor had given me the greatest gift of all, the gift of purpose, of mission, of understanding exactly what the world needed and exactly how to provide it, one stitch at a time, one death at a time, one perfectly executed act of justice at a time, until balance was restored and cruelty finally learned to fear its own reflection.